Alright, so we've pretty much covered PhoneGap top to bottom. We looked at the native features and JavaScript APIs that we can use. We built a couple small applications. So now it's time to move to Intel XDK. Intel XDK stands for Cross-Platform Development Kit, and it's basically a cross-platform HTML5 framework that allows you to create hybrid apps. And we've gone over hybrid apps in the PhoneGap sections of this course. It's basically web apps that are built with HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and they're put through a container that can kind of wrap them up and spit them out as a native app. There's no browser controls or anything like that. They can be installed and placed right on your home screen just like any other native app. Now, if you may have heard of a company called AppMobi, or even heard of the XDK platform itself when it was offered by AppMobi, well, Intel has recently purchased the XDK part of AppMobi, and the actual framework hasn't changed that much. We're still using the AppMobi JavaScript calls, things like that. Intel XDK works pretty similar to PhoneGap in a way where it takes your web standards, your apps that are created with HTML and JavaScript, and creates a native app basically. XDK apps can run without a browser, and they can also utilize native resources. Just like we saw with PhoneGap, XDK can access the device's camera, the contact list, notification system, pretty much all of the features that a native app could access. XDK apps can be packaged for Apple iOS, Google Android, Amazon Kindle, Facebook, and other app stores. Now we'll be working with something called the XDK development tool, and it's not an IDE. It's basically a development environment that gives us a device emulator to work with, so that we can actually test quite a bit of our functionality right in that tool. And it also allows you to develop using GUI elements, which are basically a designer. You could grab the button and slide it over into your application or an input field, things like that. But you can also use text code, which is what I prefer when building applications, just because the GUI or the GUI elements have their own code, and I don't really like to work with generated code. XDK, we can get the desktop version or the Google Chrome version, which is basically a Google Chrome extension. And the Chrome version seems to be much more popular. That's what you see if you find any tutorials or articles or whatever on XDK, and that's usually the version you see. You need to create an account to use XDK in the cloud, which is free. Pretty easy to sign up. We'll go through that process. There's many demo apps that can be used for examples, which I found really nice, because they have a demo app for the geolocation functionality, for the accelerometer, things like that. And it uses Chrome's debugging tools, which are always very helpful, and it also offers some testing tools. So here's what the XDK development tool looks like. In this particular image, it looks like we're developing a game, and the iPad device is chosen, and it's the landscape view. You can easily change devices up here. You can use an iPhone or an Android device. You can change the positioning. It has an accelerometer option, so we can actually drag these around and it'll move the device around and give us those coordinates. We can choose to use a Wi-Fi or a 3G connection, and we also have a geolocation box down here, so we can deal with any kind of geolocation programming. And then up here we just have different controls. We have save buttons and delete if we want to remove our project. We have this button here which can switch from emulator view, which is right here, to a text editor, which I prefer. But we don't have to use this to write our code. In fact, we're going to use this as an emulator so we can see what our app will look like, but we'll still be using NetBeans to write our text. So how does it work? Apps built with XDK use a full screen web view control as the user interface. So there's no browser buttons or anything like that. It's full screen, just like a native app. It runs similar to a tiny website. The HTML, JavaScript, and CSS, those are typically known as a bundle when all put together. So we have our XDK interface, which is basically a test container. We're creating code, we're deleting code, and then we have our HTML, JavaScript, and CSS, which is called the app bundle. And then finally, production. Well, obviously, a mobile app is going to be the end result of our projects. Native resources. We can pretty much access what PhoneGap could access: accelerometer, analytics, cache, camera, canvas, contacts, device, display, Facebook, which is something we haven't looked into yet, file, geolocation, multi-touch, notifications, OAuth authentication, and the player. We're not going to get into all of these, but I'll try to squeeze some of them in. So this is a very basic syntax. It's very basic boilerplate. It's just an HTML document. We're including this appmobi.js file. Let's see what we need. We have an add event listener, just like we did in PhoneGap, except we're looking at the appmobi.device.ready event. Alright, now when that's fired off, we're going to fire off the on-device ready function, which we have here, and we could then insert our code here. Alright, so Intel XDK help resources. We have the main website, which is HTML5 dev-software.intel.com. We have this link to the JavaScript APIs, which are extremely helpful, and we have some help videos available here at the software.intel.com website. There is a lot of great documentation on this site, but there's not too many things out there as far as third-party tutorials or anything like that. So you basically be using these sites for your research. But like I said, there's a lot of good documentation, and plus you're going to have this course under your belt, so you'll be fine. So that's it. Now we can get to setting up our environment, getting the XDK platform ready so we can build some apps.